Hey, Donald. Can you hear me? I'll give you a second to get your mic going.
Oh, never mind.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. All right.
It 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 gave me a little window that popped up on my other monitor that said join with computer audio.
Yeah. You gotta do that when you jump in because it lets you actually make a phone call. You can call in if you don't have speakers or a microphone or whatever. So you can
Can
call
you can you actually not use like Discord or Skype?
instead of Zoom or what?
Yeah.
I mean, I could use other things. The nice thing about Zoom, though, is it's paid for by the college, and it lets me record the meetings as well as sharing.
Oh, okay.
So there's a few things about it that make it beneficial for me.
I wasn't trying to, like, believe me, there are things about Skype and Discord I don't like. Like Discord sells chat information to
Okay,
third parties. I mean, I have Discord, but I'm very conscious of what I type
right.
in Discord.
Don't blame you. Yeah, I would be. I'm conscious of what I type online in general. you know, you never know what the platform that you're using is, what information they're selling to people. Um,
Yeah, I
Did you manage, Donald, to get uh, through the chapter one activities just fine on your VM?
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Just want to make sure.
I wait, hold on. I want to make sure.
I'm not. I'm on Canvas right now, but I know several got it done, but several haven't, and I know there's been some confusion about how to access it, and it's been tough. So.
Yeah, I got through the hands-on activities last week because I was already up on VM because I had to be for the other classes that I'm doing as well.
Okay, gotcha. So are you taking Security Plus with
Sanderlin?
Handlin right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Although I don't use the VM very much unless like because some of the programs that some are involved with, some of the labs I actually wanted to tinker with, so I actually installed them on some of my drives,
Mhm.
like hash. What is it? Hash calculator. And,
Okay, gotcha.
but yeah, my computer's a mess. Like I have one drive I set aside for like Kali Linux, and now I'm kind of wishing I would have put it in a VM.
So you have a dual boot, in other words, for Kali Linux.
Yeah,
No, bummer. And so you're wasting that entire drive.
I mean it's not a very big drive. Like I have 8 hard drives, so it's not like I'm short of space. But it's the one I'm using is one of my solid states, and I kind of wanted to use that for something else. So I think I'm just going to reboot it on a VM, like uninstall it. But
Wouldn't blame you. Well, chapter two, Donald. Looks like you're the only one showing up today. It's 3:30 and nobody else is here. But chapter two, I'm gonna probably go into it in more detail next Friday. But because it's due next Friday, it's pretty simple. Um, Really, it just involves doing 2-3 and 2-5 for your labs. Uh,
okay,
and obviously the review questions as well. So it should be pretty quick for you. Yeah, so 2-3 is about viewing server roles. Here, I'll go ahead and share my screen with you. If it lets me. Yep, there we go. So, whoops. What happened to the page that I was on? Okay, 2-3, viewing server roles. So server roles are exactly what they sound like. The term is used to describe what the duties of a Windows server are. They use that term roles for that purpose. And so when you install a role, you're actually you're telling the server to perform this function, right? And so there's a lot of roles in Windows Server, but some of the primary ones and the ones we'll deal with in Intro to Windows Server are things like Active Directory or Directory Services is the actual name of the role. DHCP is a role. DNS is a role. IIS. So for web server, if you want to have a web server, and of course Windows Server is pretty versatile. So when you go to add these roles and features, it's there's quite a bit you can do with it. So I think this main lab here, it's pretty cut and dry. It just has you. I think it just has you look at them. If I'm not mistaken. So let's go ahead and click through this real quick. Let me get my server up and running. I'm actually going to switch monitors. Can you see the VMware workstation up there, Donald?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So Server Manager is sort of the go-to for adding roles, setting things up in Windows, or in Windows Server specifically. So Server Manager starts on startup with Server, and yeah, like I say, it's sort of the go-to for doing anything. It lets you do quite a bit, and it's actually gotten more versatile since the days when I took this class. Back in Server 2003 when I started, which that's pretty amazing that's what I started on. Basically Microsoft hadn't done an update for a long time when I started taking classes. So they've gotten better about keeping their operating systems a little bit more cutting edge than they used to. But back when I started taking classes, Server 2012 was right around the corner, but 2008 and 2003 were sort of fighting for dominance in education. And so I started when I took Intro to Windows Server back in the day. It was 2009. And it was Windows Server 2003, and then in 2010 they switched the curriculum to Windows Server 2008, and then of course a few years after, like a year after I graduated, Server 2012 was released. They did release a version of Server called Server 2011 Essentials, but it was just a basic version of Windows Server. In Chapter 1, it talked a little bit about the different versions of Server, and Essentials is sort of a very limited version. There's really not a lot you can do as far as the roles and stuff.
Do you like the current version of it?
Server 2016?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, this technically isn't the current version, so you're kind of doing what I did. 2019 is the current version. The version that we're doing here, though, is 2016. I haven't played around with 2019. But as far as 2016 is concerned, yeah, I like it, and I've used it in a couple of different places. The only problem with keeping up with the cutting edge versions of Windows Server that I've found in my experience is that you run into issues where
nobody else is running it, or
nobody else is running it. Number one, because it's too new, and number two, nobody else has updated their software for it. So you may or may not get working software. So like, for instance, I just upgraded a company. They had a server that was running 2008, Server 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in desperate need of an upgrade because there was some new features available in this software. And so I looked into it and I called the company, and I find it really important, especially when upgrading a server, that you want to make sure compatibility across the board. And it looked like most of their stuff was compatible. There was one program that was not compatible with Server 2016. Everything else was, but one program was compatible with only 2012. So it kind of ended up being a bad upgrade for them. I ended up making it work. They had I worked with their support and got it to work. But they said we can't guarantee the compatibility because we haven't had a time to verify that yet. And so anyways, it worked, but it was a struggle getting it to work. So, and it was one of their older programs that was like pretty important for their functionality, but they had several other things as well. So, but it's really annoying to upgrade it with a brand new server, all new stuff, and you have to do the second newest version of Windows Server that's probably going to be end of life in a couple years. So I don't know. Windows has been really on top of EOLing all their stuff, which is really, really annoying for me anyway. But yeah, here's Server Manager. This is sort of what it looks like. It's, again, this is kind of your go-to for doing stuff in Windows Server. Even once you add roles or features to the server, you can manage and do a lot of stuff from here. Especially, this is now, we're using the standard version of Server, but especially in the Essentials version, the Server Manager becomes really, really crucial, because this is basically where you do everything. You almost can't do anything anywhere else because it's almost annoying how little you can do elsewhere, because you learn all this stuff. You learn all of the sort of go-to ways of doing things, the main routes for setting up users, through Active Directory and through, making.
Would you say it becomes like, did they do it for ease of access but ended up making it a single point of failure?
That's pretty much exactly what Essentials is. That's Essentials in a nutshell.
Okay.
Ease of access, meaning make it so that any idiot can set it up. But anything goes wrong with the Server Manager, then you're kind of screwed, because you can't fix it really that well. As far as like, if you want to make changes to a user or do intricate stuff that you would otherwise have access to in the Essentials version, they kind of limit your ability to do that stuff. And I understand their thinking on that is that, this is a limited version of Server, so let's limit your capability of doing stuff. But it really does get annoying when you're trying to use it. Maybe I'll throw a little Essentials version of Server on a VM just so I can demo that for you guys, because I think a lot of these Zoom meetings, especially the ones on the off weeks, are going to be a little less to cover. But anyway, so this is Server Manager. The lab basically just has you look at the roles, I suppose. Server Manager, click local server, as you look at the roles here. Roles and features right here. So right now, because it's the default settings, these are all just features. I guess besides storage and file storage services. Storage services and file storage services are default roles in Windows Server 2016. That's sort of news to me. But in older versions, previous versions of Windows Server, no roles would be installed by default. But a lot of features, definitely. You see Windows Defender and stuff like that. So as you look at that, and then as you look at, I'm getting a phone call here. Ignore it. Okay, and then I guess it does have you add a role. What does it add? Let's see. So there's a couple of ways to do the add roles wizard, but I'm not sure where they're saying here. So it says add roles and features wizard. If you see the before you begin window. Okay, I gotcha. Where does it actually tell you to add a role though? Okay, it says click dashboard. Okay, so, okay, all right. Oh, somebody else just jumped in. Caesar. Hello, Caesar. Welcome. I was just having a little bit of a conversation with Donald. He's pretty much the only other person on. Yeah, I'm just kind of going through the lab with him. You say, hey. All right, so you hear me, great. Okay, so now do a little role-based. Okay. All right. So now, what role is it going to have us add? It looks like, oh, it just has you look at it. Okay, that's cool. You're just taking a look at what your options are. So you can see there's quite a few roles that you can have your Windows Server perform. Active Directory services are probably the most specific to Windows Server. Everything else is available with other servers. You can, you can even do a lot of this stuff with just Windows 10. Even DHCP, if you download third-party software and DNS, you can do through Windows 10. But
Hyper-V is kind of like VMware, only like
yes, yeah, it's a hypervisor. Now there's two types of Hyper-V, two ways you can set up Hyper-V. Mm-hmm. Hyper-V can be a type 1 hypervisor or a type 2 hypervisor. Basically, you can install it as a bare metal or a hosted hypervisor. So bare metal would mean there's no operating system, just a hypervisor, and then all of your operating systems installed on the hypervisor. Where this version of Hyper-V would be a hosted version. So you've got Windows Server 2012 installed as your host operating system, then you install Hyper-V as a role in that operating system. So it's a type 2 hypervisor. So then you've got a few other roles that are available for you. So things like remote access. This is for setting up VPNs, remote desktop services. If you want to be able to use your Windows Server for remote assistance or remote desktop on computers on your network. This is really handy for administrators. And you can use it for other purposes as well, but it's very handy for administrators. IIS is super commonly used. Oh, so you know what it looks like? There you go. This is news to me. And now, if I seem like I don't know that much about server, there's new things that you discover about Server 2012 or the new version of Windows Server all the time. To claim I'm an expert on the latest version of Windows Server as it comes out would be foolish. So who knows what new things are available in Server 2019. I'm not that into researching that stuff.
Like the foundational stuff.
And that's what this class is about anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know more than we do, but there's so much stuff. I had no clue about all of the features of Windows, like even in the A+ class. I was like, wow, it has that, but it keeps it hidden for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So this is similar to adding features to Windows 10.
Yeah.
So are you in CNT 121?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Windows client operating system class, that thing will blow your mind because you'll find out stuff you never knew. You're like, what? You can do that with Windows? Because there's things that are hidden. Exactly right. Features and stuff. So that's kind of how Windows Server is. And the thing is, whenever they release a new version of Windows Server, they add new stuff. For example, Server Essentials experience is now built into the standard edition version of Server. So that's not something that I was aware of.
That's kind of like running it in like not necessarily compatibility mode or safe mode, but turning on
the Windows Server Essentials experience. So you buy Windows Server Standard and you say, this is too complex for me. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. And it's going to go ahead and turn on everything else that's involved in that. Remote access management tools, file services tools.
Windows Server for Dummies.
Yeah, Windows Server Backup. In fact, I thought maybe this is a separate thing with Windows Server Essentials. I'm not super familiar with Server Essentials and all the intricacies there, but I thought that part of it was domain services, Active Directory domain services, built in. So maybe that's something you just have to add as a separate component, but in any event. And then Windows WSUS is a really, really handy service, which I think we look at. I'm not sure all of the ones that we look at in this class off the top of my head. I know we look at Active Directory domain services in depth. We look at DHCP and DNS, file storage services, obviously, remote access services we look at. And I think we look at Windows Server Update Services. Windows Server Update Services is super handy when you have a domain and you want to control users' updates. This is really, really good with Windows 10. One of the problems with Windows 10 is that you cannot turn off Windows updates. But if you have a domain, there is an exception. You can get around the fact that Windows 10 has that inability to turn off updates. And some of those updates are really, really a nuisance. And so you might want to install Windows Server Update Services as a way of mitigating those effects, right? Because it'll let you only install the ones that you want. It lets you download them. And then if you have Hyper-V installed in a virtual machine, you can even implement updates on your virtual machines and find out if that's going to be something that causes you problems. So that's a pretty handy service to install. That in conjunction with domain services is really, really handy. And so you can mix and match and do what you want. And it's usually recommended. However, I don't know if this is doctrinal or curriculum accurate to say that, but personally, I recommend trying to limit your services just down to a few things. One of the big mistakes that you make is you go, oh, I bought this Windows server, it's really powerful. It's got 64 gig of RAM and all this, dual CPUs and everything. And you say, all right, so I'm going to install all these services and have this server doing everything on its own. And you find out that your 64 gig of RAM and your dual CPUs gets used up really, really fast when you're talking about a server. Because you have, if you have a large network, a large domain, you have maybe possibly, tens, 50s, hundreds of users all bearing down on the resources of that server for various services. So that's one of the pitfalls that you see a lot with using Windows Server a little bit too much. So for a little bit too much, too many services. All right, so the next slide you have to do, you don't have to install Windows Server. Thankfully, I'm kind of skipping that. Everybody already did it. Who, at least several of you already did it, I should say. Those who actually downloaded VMware on their computers did it. Let's see, where's 2-5? Okay, so 2-5 has you perform initial configuration tasks using Server Manager. So a few things, things like changing your computer name, which I'm not even going to demonstrate. That's just pretty basic stuff. Changing your firewall settings, changing your IP address, all from Server Manager. It specifically has you do it from Server Manager. So, all right, well, I'm not going to add any roles today. I'm going to leave my server in a sort of blank state. But I promised that these meetings would be pretty short, and we're at like 20 minutes. So I'm going to call it there unless Caesar or Donald, if you guys have any questions, you guys are the only ones on at this point. So the floor is yours if you have questions or comments or anything. No? All right. So then we are going to go ahead and shut down this meeting, and I will see you guys all next Friday.